continues. So let me switch gears to our focus today. So our focus today, and we chose it, is mentoring. Every center elevator speech, you'll hear about our three-part mission. Every researcher presentation mentions mentors. Every grant application lists mentors. It is not a nice to have, it is a must have for our researchers. Science by design is a collaborative process, and it builds on prior discovery, which tells you how mentoring is so important, and it is an investment in the career of a scientist. So a major leg of our three-legged stool, if you want to call it that, of our three-part mission is mentoring. Our three-part mission has education, it has funding for researchers, and it has mentoring. We chose this today because we have two of the leading experts in mentoring, and we know that that is core to our success at the center. Both Dr. Libby and Dr. Regensteiner mentor countless people on campus and around the country. I would probably add international to that as well. And it is a core part of what they do and a core part of the center. So as we get into the discussion portion for today, I recommend that you all, and I think most all, do have their selves on mute. Do feel free to use the chat in here, and we will do a Q&A at the end. And when we do the Q&A, please take yourself on mute. You don't have to use the chat function for that. But let me start by introducing Dr. Regensteiner. And this will be the time that I refer to her as Dr. Regensteiner. It's hard to not say Judy. But Dr. Regensteiner, as you know, is the co-founder of the center and the director of the Center for Women's Health Research. There's many things in her bio that you all are very familiar with, but I wanted to just make sure that we all remember that beyond what Judy does for the center, she has also had her lab funded for over 20 years and spends a lot of time doing research. The other thing I wanted to mention today that wasn't part of her bio is that this week, actually on Friday, Judy accepts a national award. The latest national award that Judy is accepting, actually. And it's the Bernadine Healy Leadership in Women's Cardiovascular Disease Award. For those that don't know who Bernadine Healy was, the award was created in honor of the work and memory of Bernadine Healy, MD, the first woman to direct the National Institutes of Health and the first physician to lead the American Red Cross. She was the founding editor of the Journal of Women's Health and the champion of women's health throughout the academic and government career. A very prestigious award for Dr. Regensteiner and for the center. So that'll happen on Friday. And as soon as we have a link, which we are still trying to find, we will share it with you in a biweekly. So be sure to read your biweekly and hear more about this extremely prestigious award that Dr. Regensteiner is receiving. Our second speaker, Dr. Libby. I tried to shorten down. Sharing bios quickly is so difficult. So I wanted to just highlight a few things that are pertinent to our discussion today in Dr. Libby's career. Beyond her being an expert in mentoring, research, and faculty development, she also has a national reputation in patient-oriented outcome research. Once a researcher, I think what you find is while mentoring and leadership of different centers and other things happen, research is still core to our senior faculty. Dr. Libby joined the CWHR senior faculty in 2017, and she co-directs some of the grants with Dr. Regensteiner that are core also to mentoring. You all have heard about something what we refer to as the BIRCH. That's the Building Interdisciplinary Careers in Women's Health program, and it is a career development mentoring program, and Dr. Libby and Dr. Regensteiner work together on that as well. So that brings us to why we're talking and why they are our speakers today on mentoring, and I'm going to turn this directly over to Dr. Regensteiner to kick us off.
Thanks, Jennifer. And hi, everybody. It's good to see everyone. And I certainly enjoy working with my colleague, Dr. Libby, as well. We do a lot of mentoring work together, and I love that because I do love mentoring. And I'm going to talk to you briefly about a strategic mentoring and show you a few slides about it. But it's something I've based a lot of my career on. I'm just very passionate about mentoring, and I enjoy it. And I judge myself by how well my mentees do. So I look at how people do, and a lot of them have done, all of the people I'm mentoring currently have done very well, and it's a great joy to me. And I'm very lucky that I take joy from other people's successes, not just my own, because it enriches my life a lot, because I get a lot more successes. When you're counting everybody's, it's wonderful. But I just rejoice in seeing a young person get funded and be successful and move forward in their research career, because most researchers are here to contribute to people. They're trying to help humanity. And I love watching that process occur. It's a beautiful thing. So I really enjoy it. I have the next slide, Carly. Academic medicine careers, just to orient you a bit to what people go through in academic medicine, they require very intensive periods of work. Sometimes, very, very long days and no breaks. There is also in our career a lot of rejection. Many times your grant will get rejected, or sometimes a manuscript will get rejected. This is common. It's not just occasional, I hate to tell you. I have experienced it. I think that the reason that I know how it feels is because I have experienced it for sure, and I hate it a lot, and I still get crushed by it. So I know that young people that I work with get very crushed by it, and the more junior you are in your career, the more you're likely to be more impacted and feel more crushed, because you have fewer successes to balance out the rejections. So reminding young scientists of the successes and of the future is very, very important to keep them motivated. And especially in this time of COVID, it's even more crushing. So I've been working with a lot of young scientists, and I know Dr. Libby has as well, to try to keep their spirits up during this time and, work on papers with them, work on grants with them. In addition, in academic medicine, there are some people with strong egos. However, I will tell you that some of the most wonderful people I know in my life are in academic medicine. Some of my best colleagues and friends come from academic medicine. So it's also a great place to meet wonderful people. The upside of academic medicine careers is we get to do discovery. And when you're doing research, you're discovering exciting and novel things that may change the future of medicine. Some things are fairly small, some things are bigger, some are more related directly to patient care, some are more basic building blocks of studies that will lead to better patient care, but it's really an exciting field, and being able to run down the hall or now turn on the Zoom and show some exciting results to a colleague and talk about it, it's so much fun. And to me, it is the best possible life. It's an opportunity to realize dreams. And for instance, co-founding a center is such a dream. So I've been very fortunate in my career. And I like to help everyone else find their dreams too. I like to be strategic about career development. And it may seem obvious to all of you that of course you would be strategic, but it's interesting how much trial and error can actually be involved. Strategy, if you think about things, and if you have a good mentor, you're more likely to choose a strategic path, and you're more likely to get where you want to go more quickly. It's easier to work with mentors if you and they know who you are. So if somebody is asking you, a mentor is asking you to do a project that has no interest for you and that isn't exciting for you, and you don't get why you're going to do it, that's not a good thing. So being able to talk to your mentor about a good strategic direction is very important. And most mentors want you to be excited by the work, so they'll work with you to shape your project. On the other hand, if you bring a project to a mentor that's wildly impractical and not feasible given the resources and time in your career, then it's good to have a mentor to tell you, well, let's wait a little because we're not ready quite for that. So you're shaping somebody's career and helping them be strategic. So working with a mentor and being strategic will bring a more coherent approach. It's important because the resources available to achieve goals are usually limited, and they're more available to those who know what they want. So helping your mentee figure out who they are, not who you are, who they are, is very important. Next slide. So when you're entering the faculty, you need a strong primary mentor. And everybody on our faculty is assigned a mentor. And many of those relationships are great, some are not. And a junior person may be intimidated about saying, hey, this mentor isn't working out for me, because it is intimidating. And so it's good to have a team. That's why having a team can be highly beneficial. All of the young scientists that I work with, the MDs and PhDs that I mentor and work with on mentoring teams, have a team. That's an important thing. They don't just have one mentor. That's the old model, one person, one mentor. Now, you will always see, or typically see, people having a primary mentor to help guide them, but you'll also have other people on the team who may strategically help them shape their career. And if it's not working out, and if there's personality conflicts, the team can help, because you'll have somebody else to go to if you're a young person, and not be afraid of that primary mentor. So, and also you can get insights from several areas, different points of view, and different fields of medicine and science. Next slide. There are two main types of mentors. I think there are content mentors who are responsible for developing the intellectual scholarly careers of their mentors. So those have to have expertise in the mentee's area of scholarship. These mentors are expected to help provide resources to support their mentees' work, and they meet with their junior people, their junior faculty often. And I think typically once a week is the least that you should meet with a primary mentee. And sometimes it could be more. And the hard part of not being in the office, of working from home, is that sometimes, it's just a little harder to connect. Now, the phone is a pretty easy way to connect, and I'm using it and Zoom a lot, but it's nice to be able to run down the hall to your mentor and vice versa, to just go over results. And of course, we cannot do that right now, but I'm definitely very mindful that my mentees still need me, and I'm meeting at least once a week with all of them. So the content mentor is the expert in the scientific field. So if you're an endocrinologist, that primary mentor might be another endocrinologist, or somebody also expert in metabolism. So that person has the scientific content in mind. A career mentor is an expert in career development skills and strategy. And I serve this role a lot, as does Dr. Libby, where I am a primary mentor for several people, which is a very intensive relationship, but I'm also a career mentor for many, many people who come to me for strategic development. Jennifer mentioned the Birch Grant, which is building interdisciplinary research careers in women's health. That grant focuses on funding and developing the careers of men and women scientists, MDs and PhDs, who want to build careers in women's health or sex differences in some very focused areas. And for those people, sometimes I end up being the content mentor, but usually I'm the career mentor. I'm always the career mentor, because when they get the Birch, if they get awarded the Birch through the peer review process, they get me as one of their career mentors. So, and they get Dr. Libby too. So it works out very well. So they get career mentoring. There we're teaching strategy and skills. And the important thing about that is that getting an academic career does not just involve learning how to write a grant or write a paper. It also involves learning how to do things like negotiate. How do you ask for a raise? A lot of people have trouble with that. And so we teach these skills at the center. We have 20 different modules, including negotiation, how to run a lab, how to fund your lab, how to keep things, how to hire people. All those things need teaching. And I think Dr. Libby will talk a little more about some of that as well. Okay, Carly. Next slide, please. The characteristics of a good mentor, can you go back one, Carly? That person has to be a role model. If you're telling people to do things and you're not doing them, your mentee will definitely notice. You serve as an advisor. You have to be reliable. You can't always cancel meetings because you're busy with other things. You have to really prioritize the person. It has to be very reciprocal. You have to be willing to promote that person's career. You have to be somewhat altruistic. And I do know people who do not have this in their makeup. I have seen that, and it is not pretty. But most people that are passionate mentors are somewhat altruistic, so that you're doing this for the love of mentoring as much as any other thing. It also has to be respectful. This is about developing another human being's career. And you have to be very respectful about what's important to that person, not just what's important to you. Very important to be able to listen. Okay. The characteristics of a good mentee also exist. You have to identify, it helps really strongly to identify your personal mission and vision. The more you know about yourself, the easier it will be to mentor you, because the goal should be to make the best you, not the best me. If I'm mentoring somebody, it's about them. And the mentee should seek feedback and ask questions and use that feedback to improve their performance. They should also always schedule or have a schedule when they meet with you. One of my mentees is Dr. Amy Hipschman, who's a young physician who I started mentoring years ago, and I'm her primary mentor. And now she's an associate, and I'm, but when we started meeting, it was, at least once a week, and much more often. We're still meeting pretty often, but she's doing spectacularly well, and I'm very proud of her. But she always came to our meetings with an agenda, and she still does. And that really helps keep things focused on what she wants to talk about, not just what I think we should talk about. It's just wonderful. A good mentee follows up on what we talk about in the meeting. So at the next meeting, you're talking about something new and not saying, well, have you done this yet? Have you done this yet? Just tiresome. A good mentee should hold your feet to the fire and not just be willing to cancel meetings. It's a primary role for an advisor to be reliable and to be there. A good mentee, as expected with the mentor, a good mentee is also respectful and considerate of the mentor's needs. Okay, Carly. What do mentors do? We provide advice, feedback, and coaching on a regular basis, typically weekly or biweekly, especially at the beginning of somebody's career. We really help direct the career course of the person being mentored in the way that they want to go. Now, the tricky part is that a young faculty member may not really know what their limitations are, what their goals are. So partly the goal is to help them figure out who they are. When Amy Hipschman came to work with me, she wanted to be in my lab and do clinical research with patients in one way, but she developed it into a different type of researcher, dissemination and implementation researcher. And that was wonderful. That's where she naturally headed, and I helped her head there. And I'm proud that she is doing the work she wants to do. We're still working closely together on many projects. It's just wonderful to see that she is being herself and able to be in the best possible way. You also read people's grants and papers. I cannot tell you how often I've been on the study section for NIH or other review processes and read a grant that clearly the mentor had never read. You find all kinds of problems when you find that. It's just awful. And this poor young person spent hours and hours working on this grant, and their mentor didn't read it, and they're not going to get funded because nobody paid enough attention to it. So that's not acceptable, period. You also are supposed to introduce the person being mentored to people that they need to know to advance their careers. At national meetings, this is one important thing that we're not getting to do right now, is go to national meetings, but of course it's not safe, and I'm sure when it is safe, people will go back to them. That you get to introduce people to the people they need to know. When we go up for promotion to a different rank, we have to be able to get letters from outside our institution to show national reputation. And you're never going to meet people, especially not the day before you go up for promotion. So this is something your mentor should be doing very regularly. Pitfalls are there is a huge power differential. The mentor is much more powerful just by the nature of the roles. So you have to be very careful to avoid conflict of interest or stepping on the mentee's feelings or thoughts. And if your goals differ from your mentee's goals, you got to understand the mentor goals differ from mentee goals. You've got to understand that the goals should be those of the mentee, which may need to be shaped, but definitely need to be their goals, and they need to be excited about. Next slide. Just a word about sponsorship. Sponsors are not mentors. So I'll just say that. Sponsor is another important role. Sponsors are advocates, usually in high positions, who can be anywhere in the country. A mentor is usually at the same institution. And these sponsors use their influence intentionally to help others advance. So it's usually more episodic than a mentor. Next slide. Sponsors might invite you to speak at an important meeting, to be an author in an important paper, to speak at a conference, to take a new position. They may nominate the person being sponsored for an award or other honor, and they may introduce the person being mentored to people that they need to know to advance their careers, like national experts in the field. And I had a wonderful sponsor, and I still work with him. Dr. William Haskell from Stanford University served throughout my career as a sponsor. We worked on a big project together, and he did this for me as he has done for many other young faculty. He took an interest in my career. I ended up at a meeting in Finland because he invited me. I ended up on NIH writing groups because of him. And this is a man that I absolutely revere. And he's now on our scientific council because he's an internationally incredibly well-known and wonderful person. But that guy, William Haskell, played an enormous role in my career as a sponsor. Okay, conclusions. Mentoring is critical to a successful career. I do know young people who try to navigate this without a mentor, and it doesn't work too well. If the person mentoring is optimal, or in-person mentoring is optimal. I looked at a chat, so I got distracted momentarily. Sorry about that. But we're doing the best we can on Zoom. I have actually taken socially distanced walks with occasional mentees, and we're very careful to mask up and keep the distance. But still, sometimes it's good to see people in person. To lead into what Dr. Libby's going to talk about, asynchronous, widely available resources that provide mentoring also need to be there to play an important supporting role. And I got asked a question, like Karen Cook, do mentors help you find sponsors? They can. Sometimes you just find them, and they will try to help you network. And in that networking, you will find sponsors for sure. I just want to note before I turn things over to Dr. Libby that we are very excited about our community event this year in November, formerly known as the Luncheon. We do plan to come back in person when we are allowed. We're also very excited about that. So that's in our future. And I really appreciate all of you being here today. It's great. I'm going to have to leave a few minutes early because I'm teaching women's leadership training, which is a course we teach to 50 young assistant professor women about developing their careers. That course is taught out of the dean's office, which I very much appreciate. And we're meeting online today to do women's leadership training. And I have to go introduce our speaker since I'm the course director. So I will be leaving. Nobody take offense that I'm leaving a little early. And thank you. And here's my colleague, Dr. Libby.
Thanks, Judy. That was wonderful. Incidentally, if you wanted to hear Judy have more extended comments on these subjects, I have her recorded giving a lecture in the course I'm going to tell you about. So let me just share the screen. I put a note in the chat. As soon as I share my screen, I'm not going to be able to see the chat box. So you can keep adding comments or questions, but if you want my attention, please feel free to just speak up.
And I'll keep an eye on the chat box.
Okay.
I have to leave in about 10 minutes. So.
Okay. Share screen too. Okay, here we go. Yes, we see slides. Excellent. All right, well, thanks again. What I want to tell you about is something that has been just a burning need for me to create for multiple years, and I hope to show you why, and I hope to convince you that it was a good idea. And as I tell my children, I did not create the pandemic to limit their freedoms, but given COVID and all of our researchers at home and everybody forced to do more online, we suddenly have an online product for people to learn to be better researchers and research leaders. So I'm going to tell you about an online course that Judy and I created called Researcher Management and Leadership Training. It's not an overly clever title, but it was chosen to optimize search engine finding us. So that's why it's kind of a simple title. As you know, like Judy, I spent a lot of time training and mentoring early career researchers. So we call that mentored career development. And much of that is focused on science. But a huge part of academic medicine and research outside of academic medicine, frankly, is funded by external sources of grant support, of research support. So if our researchers are lucky enough to get seed funding, they can do a small version of their study to get some proof that their ideas have merit, and then they use that to successfully compete on a national level to get external grants. Now, whether you're a physician or a PhD scientist, I will tell you, most people in scientific training are not taught how to get grants. I know it's hard to believe, but it's true. Generally speaking, PhDs like Judy and myself would have learned that. I learned that as a postdoctoral fellow. So 2 years of additional training after your PhD. And that's where I really learned how to write grants. And then of course you get better by being rejected constantly over your career and reviewing other people's grants. But for the physicians in particular, they might have a research-oriented fellowship, but generally speaking, there's little training in how to get the funding for your research. And so when you have a new researcher come into the field, so they're out of training and they've been hired as an assistant professor and they're gonna start their fabulous research career, generally speaking, they have a very short time to get external funding. So they're given seed funding as part of a recruitment package. It's often 2, maybe 3 years if you're lucky. And what that means is your sponsor, your chief chair, is paying a chunk of your salary that you hope will be funded on a research grant, but is sort of gifted in investment in your research career. And so if you can't get funding in that time period, your career is going to change quite fast. You're going to either have to leave the institution and negotiate a new position. If you're a clinician, you might be forced to give up externally funded research and work in a clinic, which is fine, except most of these people have spent years of significant, highly specialized training to do this kind of work. So it's a loss to society when we and they have invested so much in their training, and then all the discovery, development, and dissemination that we can hope and expect from them to make healthcare better and health better is lost. Now, what we see is that this training gap is not only about getting the grant, but it's actually worse once you get the grant. So if you think about these fabulously talented, highly specialized, trained people, we're working very hard to help them have the skills to get funding. And then those who are successful get a grant, that's when the trouble starts. Because then they have a grant. They have money. They have to hire, fire, manage, purchase, monitor, administer, lots of more what you might call business skills that frankly they have not been trained in, and many of them have never had the kind of work experience where they would have been in charge of resources for somebody else. So they really can fall down even more significantly after they get a grant. And the price of that is they won't be successful in executing that scope of work, and then they're going to struggle to get funded again in the future. So we see this, Judy and I both have experienced this with physician scientists and PhD scientists. So we say, this is your training to be a principal investigator, the research leader on that grant, and there's some major gaps. So there is a physician scientist workforce report, and it talks about a brain drain, an academic brain drain. And what that refers to is people who would be academic researchers leaving the field because they can't get that early toehold and be successful. It's always been competitive, but it's increasingly so. And there's longer training periods, and a shorter time to make it work. So it's quite a risky time. And so that's why we have this vision, and our goal is to help early career researchers be successful in meeting their scientific goals by actually teaching them how to optimize their resources. So once they get a grant, we want it to be wildly successful. The science is rarely a problem. Almost, I would say almost never, because it's so competitive that those studies that are funded are nearly flawless in design. It's the execution that is the problem. So we wanted to develop a course to be able to reach all these principal investigators, and we looked to see, is there any existing training in this zone, which we call post-award management or lab management. And we participated in a program on campus that is run by the National Science Foundation. It's called the Innovation Corps, or I-Corps. And Ann Kirchmar participated with me on my team. And we interviewed 35 early career researchers and mentors. And here are some quotes that it basically reinforced our notion that scientific mentors are really not covering the project management and the lab management items. And frankly, some of them don't do great at it themselves. So there's a gap, and there's really nothing out there. You know, it's either very business oriented, so not targeted to researchers, or you know, it's a 2-week special course for physician leaders that costs $20,000 in 3 weeks of their lives. So it's really not accessible to everybody. And frankly, in the post-award zone, there's really not much out there. Now, Judy and I have taught this kind of content for 20 years, nearly 20 years. Many of my training programs are under the Colorado Clinical and Translational Science Institute, CCTSI. The Clinical Faculty Scholars Program is how I met Amy Hibschman. Judy mentioned her. Amy is a senior faculty at the center now. She was my mentee in Clinical Faculty Scholars, and Judy was her scientific mentor. So that's how we met. And we run these other programs. The co-mentor program teaches pairs of junior and senior mentors, actual mentoring skills. We have a leadership program for senior scientists and people who lead senior scientists. And then Judy mentioned the program she founded, the Women's Leadership Training Program, which is Assistant Professor Women in the School of Medicine. And we have others. And of course, I mentioned I do a lot of this training in small chunks for the center's faculty development programs. So what we know from these programs is we've designed them, delivered them, evaluated them, even published about them. They work, they're fun, we have great success. And yet, what is a struggle to me is that we're constantly limited by the number of people that we can reach. So in the Clinical Faculty Scholars Program, for example, we admit 6 people a year for a 2-year overlapping period. So I have 12 people a year we intensively mentor. Co-mentor, we teach 50 a year. Judy mentioned women's leadership training, 50 a year. Lights, 30 a year. So Career Cornerstone's 100, but we can't get everybody in the room. And yet we know it works. So we really wanted to go bigger, more accessible, and ideally global, and share with the world what we have learned at CU. So of course, being researchers, we have to prove that this is a good idea. And actually, Ann Kirchmar and I interviewed John Levesey to get his ideas. If you know him, he's a friend of the center, and he has a lot of experience with online education. And he told us, you have to make some version of this thing to see if it even works. And so we did. And we managed to get significant grant funding from the Doris Duke Foundation. And so the proposal was to make an online course in sort of introductory principal investigator skills, referring to post-award grant management, and then see if it's any good, if people like it, if they learn anything. So we used the largest online platform called Coursera. It's not as commonly called a MOOC platform anymore, but sometimes you might hear a MOOC. It's a massive open online course. It means that literally anybody in the world can sign in, and almost all of it is free. So CU has a partnership with Coursera, so we were able to get permission to build this course and put it on Coursera to reach the world. Here's the landing page for Coursera. The University of Colorado actually pays for anybody, they call it a person of interest, anybody with a CU email address can take anything in Coursera for free. It's actually pretty neat as a platform. And it is the premier online platform. It's a learning management system that's quite different from what many of our students are facing as online education or remote education. It's almost exclusively video-based. It's very user-friendly, and it's pretty beautiful. All right, I am going to stop for a minute and share a video. Let's see. Okay, this is part of my technical challenge for the morning. I want to show you a video to give you a flavor for what this course really looks like. Okay, let's see. Can we do this? Please let me know if, just make your video loud enough you can hear it.
With research success and leadership comes challenges. In medical or graduate school, you didn't get a certificate in lab management, you didn't get training in human resources, you didn't get a master's degree in budgeting and business. But you are expected to do all of these well if you plan to be a successful researcher and academic leader.
When I started my lab, I thought that everyone would be organized and that I would remember everything. Well, I was wrong. I was vastly underprepared to run my own lab. What did I know about budget management or personnel management?
I'm a physician researcher, and I've been able to transition from training to a Mentor Career Development Award, and recently to my own independent research project funding as a principal investigator.
I'm a physician and researcher. Today I'm going to talk about transitioning to independence as a physician scientist and sharing some of my story.
I'd like to share my experience with these three items. Number 1 is collaboration. Number 2 is priority setting. And number 3 is managing a research team.
I'm really eager to talk to you today and to help teach this course because I always wished that I had had this available to me when I was starting out as an early career researcher.
I'll be discussing some issues surrounding leadership and collaboration as it applies to your scientific endeavors and research program.
We will discuss how to select the right type of person to work on your team and how to manage the integrity of your data as your lab starts to grow, resulting in you delegating to and relying on more people.
I want to give you some tips to help you as a research leader that focuses on managing yourself and others.
In this session, I'll introduce you to lab management by focusing on managing people and teams.
In this session, I will help you effectively build your mentorship team by focusing on thinking and acting strategically.
I have spent my entire career in academic medicine and research and have mentored others to academic success for much of that time. I want to commend you on your achievements to date and encourage you in your academic research career. Our career is not an easy one, but it is a wonderful and exciting one.
You have a special opportunity to advance science and change lives. So let's begin.
Okay, I hope everyone could hear that.
And we have about 6 minutes, just a few minutes left. Okay.
Thank you.
Of course, no, thank you.
Okay, so the topics we cover, the Coursera comes in 6 sort of sections. So we really talk about leadership generally and specifically about scientific leadership, about finance and administration, so reporting, regulations, 2 sections on management, both starting a team, so hiring and onboarding, and then once you have employees, how to grow and maintain your team. And then Judy also teaches in the mentoring module, which includes coaching and sponsorship lectures. So as I said, almost everything in this course is free all over the world to anyone. You just have to log in to Coursera, make a free account. If they complete all the modules and take the summative assessments, they pay $49 outside of CU to take the assessments, and they can earn a CU certificate in researcher management and leadership training. The content is really 3 things. We have scripted lectures, so we actually had to film using a teleprompter, so everything had to be written in order to be spoken. Then we do a side-by-side live interview to sort of unpack and talk through some of the topics in the lectures. And then we have individual interviews where people get to tell their personal stories. They're very interesting. So we launched this course on April 15th. And as of this morning, we have over 2,000 people enrolled in the course. Almost 1,000 are actively in the course. You can see their progress. And we're coming up on 300 people who have completed the course. And these are people across all 6 populated continents. And we are overrepresented among learners in Africa and Asia. So our goal is, I think this has been a proof of concept that this is actually quite effective. People really like it. They're able to successfully learn it, and I think it's going to help their careers. And this is a sort of, I'll let you just look at this while I wrap up. This is a learner story. Here's a researcher in Nigeria who took this course and had gotten into leadership roles and realized he was really not prepared to lead the research group. And so he's thanking us for the learning from our instructors. So I hope you recognize in this that this work is exactly consistent with the mission of the Center for Women's Health Research. Jennifer and Judy also mentioned it, research, mentoring, and education. And I think it's a real, you can learn more about the course on our center website. You go to research and then research events and trainings. And we're just so excited about it. And I would love to hear whatever questions or comments you have. Thanks.
And I will make my closing remarks very, very short because we do have some questions for you. And I will, first of all, say there's a lot of wows and thank yous. What a great resource. So I'll share that if you hadn't seen those as well. There's a question from Lida Luneman on which of the 6 modules do you teach presentation skills?
That is we do not teach presentation skills. I would consider that we should, but for sure. There's no question we need written skills. So scientific writing is part of everything we do, and email writing, report writing. Very few people are taught scientific writing, technical writing, and that needs to be taught, as well as verbal communication for sure. I would consider that sort of either pre-award in the scientific writing zone or just general faculty development. It's absolutely a need. What I will say is that in choosing to go at the post-award skills first, frankly, it's the hardest. And yet we did it because there's nothing else out there. I've taught this for many, many years. Nobody teaches this stuff. But there are some other resources on writing grants or technical writing, and we know people can find some of that elsewhere, but we very much want to train in that topic. Thank you for asking.
So there are other questions, but I thought for those of you who I know have to kick off right at 9, I'm just going to close down on some closing comments for the meeting. But Anne, if you are able to hang on, maybe you could answer some of the questions after I do kind of an official close. Our next meeting will most likely, well, for sure, will be remote as well. And I wanted to kind of just share something in summary that hopefully you all picked up on. Anne talked about how it is so important for these skills for our researchers to have them in order to get the next grant. You all hear us refer to one of our impact, or how we make an impact, as our return on investment. For every $1 we give in a seed grant, our researchers have received a new number now. I think we used to be sharing it in the 40s. It's now at $52 for every $1 we have granted. So we feel that our return on investment, that continuation of their grant dollars, that continuation of them in their career to become an independent researcher, is something that we focus on every day, because we want our researchers to be the most successful in a research career for women's health and sex differences. We will share more on that at our next meeting. That'll probably be one of our focuses, to get you all hearing and seeing and discussing how we can better show our impact. And we will specifically focus on, most likely focus on our seed grant program. With that, I have a couple asks. I always end with a couple asks. If you haven't checked out our Let's Talk, it's on August 17th. Share it. It's remote. It's free. It's very easy to get people interested in knowing about our educational programs. Secondly, consider and contact me if you know of anybody who might be interested in being a sponsor, whether that is a small group sponsor or individual tickets, which we haven't launched yet, but we would love your thoughts on that as well, or part of our host committee. Our host committee is something that is very important to the luncheon as far as it being a success, in folks around our community who will lend their name, lend also a sponsorship, and encourage friends and other colleagues to support the center. That is a big part of what we do with the luncheon as well. I keep referring to it's the luncheon without the lunch, but we really would love your involvement in that as well. And that's my closing remarks. And then if we want to go back to questions, thank you all for attending. And Anne, do you want me to read off questions, or have you been studying them as I've been talking?
I've tried to just answer real briefly in case somebody can read ahead and you have to take off. You know, the target learner is an early career researcher who has a grant, or who is imminently going to have a grant, is writing external funding applications and hopes to be funded as a principal investigator. That being said, any stage of learning who are preparing for that kind of a career can get something out of it. It's just, you get the most out of it if it's, you know, tailored to you. The other group that it's really ideal for are established investigators, and frankly, even some of the more senior mentors, senior scientists who never were taught how to do this. I mean, I run a mentoring training program, and we have these, you know, 5-star mentors join with a mentee, and they say, I think I'm doing it right. It seems to be working, but I never had the chance to really learn the evidence-based ways to do this, and it's going to make me that much better. Those kind of people are always looking to get better. And in this way, many senior scientists who have mentees who want to give them good advice about managing a budget, or good advice about hiring or managing people, they might not know very well themselves, frankly. So we get some senior people that could benefit too. But one thing I did want to say, given COVID, everybody's at home, and I think what's neat about this is it's self-paced, so you can start and stop anytime. You can track your progress. You have constant reinforcement of your learning. So if you've ever taken one of these, you watch a couple minutes of a video and a little quiz pops up, and it's just a comprehension quiz, like did you pay attention at all? It's easy to pass, and if you fail, it doesn't matter. You click through until you see the right answer, and you proceed, and it goes to the next video. They're short videos. It's pretty engaging, and really, as a learner, you start to sort of crave the interaction. You're like, ooh, I want a quiz. I know this. And so it's very flexible for people. And if you sign into Coursera and you enroll in the course, you can pick around. You can go watch Judy's videos. And then if you think, oh, that's kind of neat, maybe I'll check out this other thing, you can pick and choose. So you're not compelled. If there's a section that you're really not interested in, you're not forced to do it. So I think it's, if you're home with kids and, you can't look at your computer till after they're asleep, you can sit in bed and watch the videos and learn something. It's totally adaptable to people's lives, which was even a limitation at CU. There are some kinds of clinical scientists who we will never get in a room all day. I mean, some of the surgeons or the proceduralists, you just can't get them in business hours. So it's really exciting to be able to make something that can be more available to everyone. And I think, and I hope and expect, this raises our stature as a center of excellence to share with other centers for women's health research, and also everybody in the world doing the research we need to have better healthcare, better health. So anyway, thanks for hanging out. I'm sorry we're over time, but I'd be happy to talk anytime.
And thank you so much. It was wonderful to highlight this fabulous product, and it's just one of what hopefully is more to come.
Yep, that's the goal.
Thank you.
Thanks.